The Buddha, the real purpose of life, not what 99% think. Why do we live? What truly gives life meaning? These questions have haunted humanity for ages. We strive for success, chase happiness, and fill our days with goals. Yet a quiet voice often asks, is this all there is? We've all felt it at some point after achieving a long-sought goal or indulging in a pleasure. A subtle emptiness creeps back in. It's an unsettling feeling that there must be something more, something deeper than the next promotion, the next vacation, or the next thrill. Consider the stories of those who seemingly had it all. Hollywood actor Jim Carrey, at the height of fame and fortune, remarked, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer." It's a poignant statement that success and happiness, as we usually define them, might not be life's ultimate purpose. So, if wealth, fame, and pleasure aren't the answer, what is? To find out, we must peel back 2 layers of understanding. First, examining why, even when we get what we want, we remain unsatisfied. And second, uncovering a deeper truth taught 500 years ago that reframes the very purpose of life. In this journey, we'll explore modern psychology and real-life stories on the surface layer, why people pursue goals and happiness, yet still feel unfulfilled. Then we'll dive into the deeper layer, an ancient insight from the Buddha, who realized that the ultimate goal of life is not happiness as we think of it, but freedom from suffering. This isn't a religious sermon or New Age spiel. It's a calm, reflective exploration of the human condition, blending psychology, philosophy, and Theravada Buddhist wisdom from the Pali Canon. By the end, you might see your own pursuit of happiness in a new light, and discover a more profound purpose to live for. The modern misunderstanding. Modern society confidently tells us that the purpose of life is to be happy. From childhood, we're taught to set goals, get good grades, find a high-paying job, fall in love, buy a house, have exciting experiences. Underneath all those goals is the assumption that achieving them will make us happy and fulfilled. In many Western countries, the pursuit of happiness is even enshrined as a fundamental right. We measure success in terms of career achievements, social status, and the pleasures we can afford. Advertisements blare that more is better, more money, more comfort, more pleasure, promising that these lead to lasting happiness. Yet paradoxically, this single-minded chase of happiness often leaves people less happy. Psychologists have observed what some call the happiness paradox. Studies led by Iris Mouse found that the more people valued and pursued happiness, the less happy and more lonely they became. It seems that desperately trying to feel good all the time can backfire. We've all experienced this in small ways, like when you try so hard to make a birthday or holiday perfect that you end up stressed and disappointed. An analysis in Time magazine put it succinctly: there's reason to believe that the quest for happiness might be a recipe for misery. When we treat happiness as a goal in and of itself, it becomes an ever-moving target. We keep raising the bar on what we need to feel satisfied. Get the great job and soon you're yearning for a promotion. Buy a new phone and delight lasts only until a newer model catches your eye. Modern life also presents a distorted image of how happy others are. Social media feeds are full of smiling faces, vacation highlights, and achievements. But as one psychiatrist noted, we rarely see others' miseries and doubts because it is unpleasant and impolite to talk about horrible stuff in public. Instagram and Facebook show a highlight reel of pleasure, giving the impression that everyone else is blissful. This makes our own normal ups and downs feel suboptimal by comparison. In truth, those people posting beach photos have their unseen struggles too. The gap between the appearance of constant happiness and the reality of life's challenges can breed a subtle dissatisfaction, a sense that maybe I'm falling short if I'm not as happy as I should be. Another modern myth is that success equals fulfillment. We assume if we accomplish enough career success, academic degrees, personal projects, we'll feel content. Yet research by Harvard psychologist Dan Gilbert and others on hedonic adaptation shows that even major positive events like a big promotion or winning the lottery often only boost happiness temporarily. We quickly get used to new circumstances. The shiny new success soon becomes the new normal, and life's joy returns to baseline. Think about times you really longed for something, perhaps getting into your dream school or moving to a new city. It felt life-changing at first, but months later you likely found yourself with similar worries and desires as before. This treadmill effect means no accomplishment ever keeps us satisfied for long. We just start chasing the next milestone. Furthermore, the focus on individual achievement and pleasure can isolate us. When we see life's purpose as maximizing our own happiness, we may neglect deeper connections or altruism. Ironically, excessive self-focus is correlated with depression and emptiness. Humans are social creatures, and studies consistently show that compassion, community, and meaning contribute far more to well-being than raw pleasure or accolades. In our modern misunderstanding, we've taken means, career, money, leisure, and mistaken them for the end goal of life. We've assumed the point of living is to enjoy and accomplish when, in fact, enjoyment and accomplishments are byproducts of something more fundamental. To glimpse what that is, let's look at those who reach society's pinnacle of success and how it didn't deliver the inner peace they sought. Reflections from the pinnacle. We often imagine that if we just had a bit more money, more fame, more success, we would finally be content. It's illuminating then to hear from people who attained everything that most of us dream of, only to find themselves still dissatisfied. Their reflections from the peak of achievement expose a truth: outer success doesn't automatically heal inner emptiness. Even at the height of knowledge and accomplishment, great minds have felt a profound emptiness. Sir Isaac Newton, after revolutionizing science and understanding the laws of nature, compared himself at life's end to a child on a shore playing with a few pretty shells while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before him. Despite all his genius, Newton sensed there was infinitely more he didn't know. This humble admission came a little before he died, suggesting that even as he was lauded as one of history's greatest scientists, he felt a lingering incompleteness. The vast ocean of truth still stretched beyond his grasp, and with it came the realization that worldly accolades hadn't answered the deeper questions of life. Leonardo da Vinci, universally hailed as a quintessential polymath and genius of the Renaissance, felt a similar sting of dissatisfaction in his final moments. According to accounts of his deathbed, Leonardo confessed, "I have offended God and mankind because my work didn't reach the quality it should have." This is a staggering sentiment from a man who painted the Mona Lisa and conceptualized inventions centuries ahead of his time. It reveals that no level of accomplishment was enough to quench Leonardo's inner critic. At the end of a brilliant life, Leonardo felt he had fallen short, calling his life's work insufficient. Such regret and self-judgment speak to the poignant truth that external achievements rarely fill the internal void. One can be admired by the whole world yet still feel unfulfilled and not good enough in one's own heart. We see this theme over and over. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs revolutionized personal computing, amassed a fortune, and became a global icon. Yet in his final days battling cancer, Jobs experienced significant regrets, especially concerning his family life. He admitted that he often neglected family for work and wished he had spent more time with loved ones. As he lay bedridden near the end, unable to climb stairs, Jobs reflected that the pursuit of wealth and business triumphs felt hollow compared to the warmth of personal relationships. It took facing death for him to realize that the ordinary moments, being present with family, nurturing love, were what he cherished most, and he had let too many of those moments slip away. This is a common late-life revelation. People rarely wish they had made more money or won more awards when looking back. They often wish they had lived more meaningfully and kindly. Even in the realm of fame and entertainment, we find the same pattern. Michael Jackson, dubbed the King of Pop after record-breaking musical success, admitted quietly in an interview, "I'm never pleased with anything." He had sold tens of millions of albums, yet described himself as a perfectionist who always felt his next project needed to be better. By the time Bad was topping charts worldwide, an inner dissatisfaction gnawed at him. Likewise, countless celebrities and billionaires struggle with depression, substance abuse, or a sense of meaninglessness once the novelty of success fades. As Jim Carrey wryly observed from experience, getting everything you thought you wanted shows you that that's not the answer. These reflections from the pinnacle of success highlight a striking reality: pleasure, wealth, and recognition do not eradicate the deeper forms of human suffering. You can conquer the world and still feel anxious, unmoored, or incomplete. Why? Because the inner causes of discontent, things like craving, fear, and lack of meaning, aren't solved by outer achievements. We chase the symbols of happiness, money, awards, fame, but what we truly seek is something those symbols often fail to provide: lasting contentment, self-understanding, and peace of mind. Hearing the regrets and yearnings of the rich and famous can be sobering. It suggests that our common roadmap to a good life might be missing a crucial dimension. If success isn't enough and happiness remains elusive, perhaps we have misunderstood the assignment of life. Perhaps, as we'll explore next, we've been asking the wrong question, aiming for happiness when we should have been examining the nature of our dissatisfaction. To find the real purpose, we must understand the mechanism that keeps us perpetually unsatisfied even when we get what we want. The real mechanics of desire. Why do we chase what we chase on the surface? It seems obvious we pursue joy, pleasure, and positive experiences because we want to feel good. But a deeper look reveals an intriguing insight. Much of what we call pursuing happiness is actually an attempt to escape discomfort. In other words, we're not so much running toward a marvelous prize called joy as we are running away from the gnawing pains of life. Understanding this flips our perspective. Maybe we are misidentifying relief as happiness. The Buddha offered a striking illustration of this in a teaching known as the Salatha Sutta, the arrow. He observed that an ordinary person, when touched with a feeling of pain, any kind of stress, boredom, loneliness, or irritation, desperately seeks something to soothe it. Touched by that painful feeling, he delights in sensual pleasure. Why is that? Because the uninstructed person does not discern any escape from painful feeling aside from sensual pleasure. In other words, when we feel discomfort, our reflex is to reach for a quick pleasure as an escape. Feeling stressed from work, we grab a drink or binge our favorite show. Feeling lonely, we scroll through social media or seek validation. Feeling unworthy, we might obsessively work for an achievement to prove our value. According to the Buddha, the only escape an unawakened person knows is to temporarily drown out the pain with some pleasure. This pleasure might be as simple as eating ice cream when you're sad, or as destructive as using drugs to numb emotional pain. Either way, the pleasure masks the suffering for a while. Modern psychology echoes this understanding. For instance, in studies of addiction, researchers find that as addiction deepens, people continue using substances not to get high but to avoid feeling low. The addict is not trying to get some extra pleasure but just trying to feel normal or avoid feeling worse, one expert noted. What started as pursuit of a good feeling becomes avoidance of a bad feeling. This negative reinforcement cycle isn't limited to clinical addiction. It's present in our daily habits. Think of the person who constantly checks their phone whenever there's a free moment. Perhaps it's not true joy in those social media hits, but a way to avoid boredom or the discomfort of being alone with one's thoughts. Or consider why we might overeat comfort food. The pleasant taste provides relief from emotional emptiness or stress. Our brains are wired to seek reward and avoid pain, but often avoiding pain takes priority. We flee discomfort first, and only secondarily do we gain a bit of pleasure as a side effect. A classic analogy in Buddhist teachings compares this to an itch and scratch. Having an itch is unpleasant. Scratching it feels momentarily pleasant. But the pleasure of scratching is simply the brief relief of pain. If there were no itch, no underlying irritation, vigorously scraping your skin wouldn't be pleasurable at all. It might even hurt. In the same way, many of our pleasures are just relief from a prior discomfort. We call that relief happiness, but as soon as we're satisfied, what happens? The pleasure fades or turns into a new form of discomfort. We then seek something else to scratch the next itch. It's an endless cycle. Let's take a simple example: hunger and eating. Suppose you haven't eaten all day, you feel hunger, pang, suffering. Then you eat a pizza and oh, it's blissful. That first slice tastes amazing, bringing relief and delight. We label that sensation pleasure. But what happens if you keep eating slice after slice? Eventually you feel full, then uncomfortably stuffed. The same food that was pleasurable becomes painful when overindulged. As one Tibetan Lama dryly noted, when we began to eat, it brought relief from the suffering of hunger and we labeled it pleasure. But as the discomfort of continuous eating became gross, we changed the label and called it suffering. What was pleasurable had become plain suffering. All that happened was that one suffering stopped, another suffering began. This is a vivid demonstration of what Buddhism calls the suffering of change. It wasn't that a heavenly happiness turned into suffering out of nowhere. Rather, the relief of hunger could only last so long before it tipped into discomfort again. The underlying hunger was temporarily quelled, then replaced by the discomfort of overeating. This pattern applies to all sense pleasures and achievements. Every worldly joy arises dependent on conditions, fades as conditions change, and can even invert into dissatisfaction. Lounging in the sun on a cool day is delightful until it gets too hot and your skin burns. Earning a promotion feels great until the new role's stress kicks in. Falling in love is exhilarating until conflict or loss brings pain. None of this means pleasure is bad. It simply means pleasure cannot stand on its own as a lasting fulfillment. It is always in dynamic tension with its opposite, pain, like two sides of a coin. We spend much of life oscillating between the two, seeking comfort, then getting restless, chasing novelty, then getting overwhelmed, fulfilling desires, then finding ourselves burdened by the very things we acquired. The mechanics of desire then operate like a treadmill. We walk or run to escape the uncomfortable spot we're in, hoping the next step will land us in lasting happiness. But the treadmill moves with us. We exhaust ourselves but stay in roughly the same place, emotionally speaking. Psychologist Viktor Frankl keenly observed that happiness cannot be pursued directly. It must ensue as a byproduct of addressing more meaningful things. When we chase happiness itself, we inadvertently amplify our awareness of its absence. It's like chasing your shadow. The faster you run toward it, the faster it flees. Similarly, by constantly trying to grab pleasure and dodge pain, we actually reinforce the idea that something is missing, that I can't be okay with things as they are. This perpetuates a chronic dissatisfaction known in Buddhism as dukkha, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. So what's the alternative? If the normal mode of life is this endless cycle of itch, scratch, crave, consume, and still not be content, how do we break free? The first step is to truly understand the cycle, to see that the happiness we seek in externals is inevitably fleeting because it's designed to relieve discomfort, not eliminate it. That understanding sets the stage for a radical shift. Instead of running from suffering toward happiness, what if we turn around to face suffering itself and uproot it? This is exactly what a young prince-turned-mendicant did under a Bodhi tree in India 500 years ago. In doing so, he discovered a truth far more profound than any worldly pleasure and charted a path for all of us to find freedom. The Buddha's insight. Siddhartha Gautama, known to history as the Buddha, the Awakened One, was a man who had literally everything one might want. Born a prince in ancient Nepal, he was raised in luxury, shielded from every hardship. According to legend, his father's palace was a paradise of pleasures. Young Siddhartha enjoyed fine food, music, and comfort, destined to become a great king. Yet despite living in a bubble of happiness, Siddhartha felt a deep disquiet in his late 20s. Sneaking beyond the palace walls, he encountered for the first time the realities of aging, sickness, and death. He realized that no matter how pleasurable life might be, it was all temporary. Youth fades, health fails, loved ones die. The unsatisfactoriness of life dukkha struck him intensely. Even a happy life was fragile and incomplete, shadowed by the inevitability of loss. This existential insight drove him to renounce his royal life and embark on a quest to find lasting freedom from suffering. After years of ascetic practice and meditation, Siddhartha attained a profound awakening under the Bodhi tree. What he woke up to were the truths now called the Four Noble Truths, the foundational insight of Buddhism. Far from being a theological dogma, these truths are more like a doctor's diagnosis and cure for the human condition. They can be summarized as follows. 1. The noble truth of dukkha, the truth of suffering or dissatisfaction. Life as we habitually live it is permeated by dukkha. This includes obvious suffering, pain, grief, trauma, but also subtle dissatisfaction. The fact that even our happiest moments don't last, that we often feel a void or stress even when things go fine. As the Buddha famously put it in his first sermon, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. Sorrow and grief are suffering. Association with what is unloved is suffering, separation from what is loved is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. This was not a pessimistic declaration that life is only misery. It was an honest, clear-eyed inventory of the universal, unsatisfactory aspects of existence. Even pleasurable experiences fall under dukkha, in that they change and cannot ultimately satisfy the heart's longing for something secure and unchanging. 2. The noble truth of the origin of suffering, the cause of dukkha. The Buddha identified the chief cause as tanha, usually translated as craving or thirst. It's our relentless desire for things to be other than they are, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, ambition, becoming, and craving for non-existence, escape, annihilation. This craving is driven by ignorance, not understanding reality. Essentially, we suffer because we cling tightly to impermanent things and because we constantly chase satisfaction in ways that are bound to disappoint. A canonical text states, "It is this craving which leads to renewed existence." Craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. In modern terms, the Buddha pinpointed that our psychological habit of resisting pain and grasping at pleasure keeps us trapped in dissatisfaction. Craving is like an itch that can never be fully scratched. It always returns. 3. The noble truth of the cessation of suffering, The end of dukkha is possible. Here lies the Buddha's great optimism. If the conditions that give rise to suffering, craving, and ignorance are eliminated, then suffering itself ends. This state of liberation is called nirvana nibbana in Pali, which literally means extinguishing, like a fire going out when it runs out of fuel. What is extinguished are the fires of greed, aversion, and delusion in the heart. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the complete fading away and extinction of craving, giving it up, relinquishing it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. Nirvana is not a place or a heaven, but a profound state of peace, the unshakable freedom from the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. The Buddha described it as unprovoked release, the secure freedom that is not dependent on any changing condition. Some texts refer to nirvana as the highest happiness, but importantly, it's not happiness in the worldly sense of a passing feeling. It's a deep contentment born of the absence of suffering. Imagine a weight you've carried your whole life suddenly being put down. The lightness, relief, and clarity that remain, that hints at what nirvana is. 4. The noble truth of the path. Leading to the cessation of suffering, the way out. The Buddha did not leave us with just a diagnosis. He provided a practical path to follow. This is the famous noble Eightfold Path, often depicted as an 8-spoked Dharma wheel. It is a comprehensive guide to ethical living, mental cultivation, and wisdom. The 8 components are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right sama here means effective or skillful in leading to liberation. Far from being arbitrary rules, these 8 factors cover every aspect of life: how we understand the world, how we think, how we speak and behave, what we do for work, and how we train our mind. The Buddha emphasized that this path is the middle way between extreme indulgence in pleasures on one hand and extreme self-mortification on the other. It's a balanced approach to gradually purify the mind and uproot craving. And this, monks, is the noble truth of the way of practice leading to the cessation of dukkha, precisely this noble Eightfold Path, he taught. In his first teaching, he described the Eightfold Path as the antidote to suffering, the medicine to cure the illness. The symbol of the Dharma wheel with 8 spokes represents the noble Eightfold Path in Buddhist tradition. The Buddha said that discovering this path was like finding an ancient road to a lost city, a timeless route walked by previous awakened ones which he rediscovered and opened for all. By turning the wheel of Dhamma, as it's called, he set in motion this teaching that leads out of suffering. The 8 spokes remind us that each element of the path is essential and interconnected, holding the wheel together. Just as a wheel lets a cart move forward steadily, the Eightfold Path allows a person to make progress toward liberation step by step. The Buddha's insight essentially reframed the purpose of life. It wasn't to accumulate more pleasures or achievements which he had renounced in his quest. Instead, the purpose is to understand suffering and remove its cause, thereby attaining a state of unshakable freedom. He famously summarized his teaching this way: "One thing I teach, suffering and the end of suffering." This might sound stark at first. Where's the talk of happiness or love or God? But when you reflect on it, everything meaningful is contained in understanding suffering and ending it. Compassion, kindness, wisdom. These blossom naturally when we truly grasp what causes suffering and let go of those causes. It's important to clarify that ending suffering does not mean life becomes a dry, emotionless void. On the contrary, those who followed the Buddha's path often describe a far greater capacity for joy, not the giddy joy of fleeting pleasures, but a serene joy rooted in compassion and insight. The Buddha taught that when you remove the thorn of craving from your heart, authentic happiness, sukha, flows as a natural result. In a way, he isn't against happiness at all. He wants to show us the highest, most reliable form of happiness. He realized that what beings truly seek is not endless ecstasy, but an end to the inner conflict that creates pain. Freedom from dukkha is bliss. Or, as a Buddhist text puts it, the cessation of suffering, the liberation of the mind. That is the ultimate happiness. Now, grand as all this sounds, the Buddha was eminently practical. He gave a path that humans in any walk of life could cultivate. You don't need to take it on faith. You test it in your own experience. We turn now to that Eightfold Path, not just as a theory, but as a living guide. How can someone in the modern Western world with a job and family and Netflix account live out the noble Eightfold Path? What does it actually look like to shift from seeking happiness to cultivating freedom in daily life? Let's examine each of the 8 factors and how they can apply to our lives here and now. Happiness. End of suffering. Before diving into the path in practice, it's worth reinforcing why this shift in aim from pursuing happiness to ending suffering is so critical. Modern psychology is increasingly validating the Buddha's insight that chasing happiness as a goal often leads to the opposite of happiness. Happiness, as we ordinarily conceive it, is a fleeting emotion, not a solid foundation to build a life on. We've seen how pleasures come and go, and how craving more of them keeps us on the hamster wheel. Now research shows that even the mindset of "I must be happy" can undermine genuine well-being. For example, psychological studies have found that people who obsess over being happy tend to become more anxious and dissatisfied. In one series of studies, participants who were instructed to value happiness highly ended up feeling worse when watching what should have been a joyful film clip. Their high expectations made normal happiness feel like a letdown. Another study noted desperately wanting to be happy is linked with lower psychological health, and those who strongly agreed that life is meaningful only if I am happy were more prone to depression and loneliness. It's as if focusing too much on the output, happiness creates a constant evaluation of, am I happy? Yet, how about now? An evaluation that ironically interrupts the experience of happiness itself. On the flip side, when people focus on addressing their problems, helping others, or finding meaning, happiness often sneaks in as a byproduct. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote, "Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do. Then you will live to see that, in the long run, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it. In other words, aim for meaning and right action and happiness will ensue. Aim for happiness directly and it will elude you." This mirrors the Buddha's approach aimed to end suffering by eradicating its causes through the path, and a deep contentment will ensue. Aim just to be happy, and you'll end up frustrated. Contemporary mental health experts also suggest that a wiser life goal is to develop resilience, understanding, and acceptance, rather than to maximize pleasure. A retired psychiatrist, Dr. Rafa Yuba, wrote, "Happiness is a ghost that's not worth pursuing. There are far wiser goals in life." He suggests that chasing an unreal permanent bliss is unhealthy. Instead, we should seek a reasonable contentment with intermittent joy and pain, accepting that pain is a natural part of life. This echoes the Buddhist perspective that complete avoidance of pain is impossible. What we can do is change our relationship to pain and pleasure through wisdom. Pain in life is inevitable. We will all experience illness, loss, etc. But suffering, the extra anguish we add through resistance, clinging, and mental torment, that is optional and can be reduced, even eliminated. Think of it this way: happiness as a transient feeling is like a pleasant breeze on a summer day. Lovely, but you can't catch it and keep it in a box. Freedom from suffering is like the sky itself, open, vast, and containing all weather without being troubled by it. When you cultivate the sky-like mind through insight and letting go of craving, breezes of joy can blow through and you appreciate them. Storms of grief can come and you know they too shall pass. You are no longer defined by the constant hunger for the next breeze. In fact, many who walk the Buddhist path report a richer emotional life than before. Laughter comes more easily, and so does compassion because you're not so wrapped up in I, me, mine all the time. Happiness is not the ultimate goal, but a frequent companion on the journey once you stop grasping for it at every step. We see this principle in everyday heroism and purpose as well. Consider someone like a dedicated doctor working long hours to save lives or a parent sacrificing for their child. They might not describe their daily grind as happiness. It can be stressful or exhausting, but they often report a deep sense of fulfillment and meaning. And when success does come, the patient healed the child, thriving. It brings a profound joy. That joy wasn't pursued for its own sake. It ensued from doing something meaningful and alleviating suffering. As one article on this topic put it, positive thinking and visualizing success can actually make you miserable. Happily, other strategies for fulfillment are available. Those strategies include things like practicing gratitude, facing one's fears, and contributing to others, all aligned with reducing fixation on oneself and one's pleasures. In summary, modern insights are converging with ancient wisdom. Happiness, as in pleasurable feelings, is a byproduct, not a goal. A short-term strategy of maximizing pleasure is like constantly licking sugar, momentarily sweet, ultimately unhealthy. A long-term strategy of minimizing avoidable suffering in yourself and others and cultivating understanding leads to a stable sense of well-being. The Buddha wasn't against happiness. He wanted us to have the truest, most profound happiness, which comes from freeing the mind of the agitation of constant wanting. He often described his enlightenment not in terms of gaining something new, but as cooling and calming the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion cooled to peace Buddha. So if we accept that the real purpose of life could be to end suffering dukkha, rather than chase an endless mirage of more happiness, how do we practically live toward that purpose? This is where the Noble Eightfold Path becomes our guiding framework. Let's explore how one can implement this path here and now in the context of modern Western life as a way to cultivate wisdom and genuine freedom. A practical path. How can we ordinary people with jobs, families, and daily responsibilities follow the Buddha's path to end suffering? The genius of the Noble Eightfold Path is that it's a practical, holistic roadmap that can be applied in every aspect of daily life. You don't need to become a monk or retreat to a cave. The path meets you where you are. It's sometimes called the middle way because it avoids extremes and integrates balance. Think of it as a guide to living ethically, mindfully, and wisely, which in turn reduces suffering and increases true well-being. Here's how you can bring each of the 8 factors into your modern life. Right view, samadhi. This is about seeing life realistically and with wisdom. In practice, right view means understanding the 4 noble truths, recognizing that life has dukkha, that our clinging causes much of our stress, and that changing our mindset can liberate us. In a modern context, right view grows as you educate yourself and reflect. It's adopting a worldview that values truth over comfort. For example, right view is remembering that material things are impermanent, so basing your identity on a car or a title will lead to dukkha. It's seeing cause and effect in karma, that your choices have consequences for yourself and others. Developing right view might involve reading wisdom teachings, contemplating your experiences for deeper lessons, or simply pausing to see a situation as it truly is rather than through the lens of ego. In everyday life, when faced with a challenge, try to view it in light of impermanence. This too shall pass. Interconnection. My actions affect others and compassion. Everyone just like me wants to be happy and not suffer. Such perspectives guide you to respond more skillfully rather than react out of blind emotion. Right intention. Sammasankappa. If right view is the compass, right intention is the motivation driving our actions. The Buddha highlighted intentions of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness as right. Renunciation sounds heavy, but it simply means the intention to let go of selfish craving and attachment. Goodwill means intentions of kindness and benevolence as opposed to ill will or hatred. Harmlessness means the intent not to cause suffering to any being, opposite of cruelty. Cultivating right intention in modern life might look like this. Each morning, set a clear intention for your day or for a situation. For example, before going into a meeting, you might think, my intention is to be honest and constructive, not ego-driven. Or at the start of the day, today I intend to practice patience and kindness toward everyone I meet. By consciously nurturing intentions of letting go, kindness, and compassion, you align your heart with the path. In everyday life, when a difficult person or temptation arises, recall your deeper intentions. If someone cuts you off in traffic, your habitual intent might be retaliation or anger. Right intention would remind you, I don't wish harm. May we both be safe. Over time, these intentions shape your character. It's like planting seeds. Keep sowing seeds of goodwill and non-attachment, and your actions will more naturally bear wholesome fruit. Right speech. Samavaka. This factor brings the path into our communication. Words are powerful. They can heal or harm. Right speech involves abstaining from lies, divisive speech, slander, or gossip that creates rifts, harsh or abusive language, and idle chatter that has no benefit. It encourages speech that is truthful, timely, gentle, and useful. In the digital age, this extends to our emails, texts, and social media posts. In everyday life, practicing right speech might mean pausing before you speak or hit send and asking, is it true? Is it necessary or helpful? Is it kind? This doesn't mean you can't ever be critical, but even criticism can be delivered with respect and a helpful intent. For instance, at work, rather than gossiping about a difficult colleague, right speech would be to address issues directly with them or a supervisor in a factual, solution-oriented way. At home, it might mean refraining from snapping at your partner in anger and instead communicating your feelings calmly. On social media, it could mean choosing not to spread an unverified rumor or engage in hateful comments. Every time you practice right speech, you contribute to an environment of trust and harmony. You also notice your own mind to speak truthfully and kindly. You must cultivate honesty and kindness internally. In this way, right speech is a training of both external behavior and inner virtue. Right action. Samakamanta. This refers to ethical conduct in physical actions. The Buddha emphasized refraining from killing or harming any living being, stealing, and sexual misconduct as core aspects of right action. In contemporary life, right action translates to living by core, moral principles. Respect life, take only what is freely given, and exercise sexual responsibility and fidelity. It also extends to things like not harming oneself with intoxicants or reckless behaviors. In everyday life, to practice right action, you might adopt habits like mindful eating, causing the least harm to animals, or at least giving thanks for the life that sustains you. Choosing not to kill even small creatures needlessly, perhaps catching a spider in your house and releasing it outside instead of squashing it, and being scrupulously honest in financial matters, not taking what isn't yours, whether that's office supplies or not paying for a service. Sexual ethics in modern terms means not exploiting others for pleasure, honoring commitments if you're in a relationship, and ensuring consent and compassion in all intimacy. each action becomes part of your spiritual practice. When faced with a moral dilemma, consult your conscience. What course of action leads to the least harm and the most integrity? By choosing that, even if it's hard, you'll find a sense of inner peace, and self-respect grows. Your life becomes simpler and freer of regret because you know you're acting in line with your values. Right livelihood sama ajiva. This factor asks us to earn our living in a way that does not cause suffering to others and is ethically wholesome. The Buddha specifically mentioned trades to avoid dealing in weapons, human trafficking, or slavery, meat production, or butchery, intoxicants, and poisons. Essentially, any occupation that directly harms lives or well-being. For us, right livelihood is a call to reflect on the ethics of our work. In everyday life, consider what you do for a living and its impact on the world. If you find yourself in a profession that causes harm or conflicts with your values, right livelihood might mean planning a transition to something more aligned. Not everyone can instantly change jobs, but you can start steering toward integrity. For instance, a marketer might refuse to promote a product they know is harmful or deceitful, even if it costs a contract. A business person might ensure their company's practices toward workers' environment consumers are fair and beneficial. It might also mean simplifying your lifestyle so that you're not dependent on a salary from unethical sources. Many people downsize material needs to have freedom to choose a more meaningful job. If you're a student choosing a career, you might weigh not just salary and status, but how the career contributes to society. The essence of right livelihood is alignment between your work and your values, making one's daily labor part of the solution to suffering, not part of the problem. When you engage in right livelihood, work becomes a source of joy and pride, knowing that my work benefits others or at least does no harm. It imbues your 9 to 5 with purpose. Right effort, sama vayama. Once your life is on an ethical footing, the focus shifts more inward to mental cultivation. Right effort is about diligence in cultivating wholesome states of mind and discarding unwholesome states. The Buddha described it as generating the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities like greed, anger, jealousy from arising, to abandon any that have arisen, and to develop and maintain wholesome qualities like mindfulness, loving kindness, generosity. It's essentially healthy psychological self-regulation. In everyday life, right effort can be practiced by being attentive to your mental diet. Just as you put effort to exercise or eat healthy, you put effort to nurture your mind. This might mean actively interrupting negative thought patterns. When resentment or worry loop in your mind, you deliberately change focus. Perhaps by recalling something you're grateful for, or by doing an act of kindness to shift your mood. It also means fostering positive habits. Maybe you set aside time each day for meditation study or reflection, watering the seeds of wisdom. You might consume uplifting content, books, podcasts, instead of doom-scrolling news that breeds anxiety. If you notice laziness or apathy dragging you down, right effort motivates you to rouse energy. Maybe by remembering your goal to live freely, you encourage yourself. Come on. Let's do a few minutes of mindfulness practice instead of just flipping on the TV. Conversely, if you're overstriving or tense, right effort also means balancing and not overdriving yourself. No pain, no gain is not the motto here. It's about steady, joyful effort. The right kind of effort has a quality of gentle persistence. Think of cultivating a garden. You consistently water the flowers, positive states, and pull out weeds, negative states, with care. Over time, your inner garden grows calmer and more joyful because of these small daily efforts. Right mindfulness. Samasati. Mindfulness has become a buzzword today, but in the Buddha's path, it has a specific and profound role. Right mindfulness is the practice of present moment awareness applied steadily to one's body, feelings, mind, and principles of reality. These are the 4 foundations of mindfulness taught in the Satipatthana Sutta. It means maintaining a clear, non-reactive attention to whatever is happening right now without clinging or aversion. In plain terms, it's being fully aware and awake in your life. In everyday life, there are countless opportunities to practice mindfulness. You can do formal meditation, for example, sitting quietly, watching your breath, or doing a body scan, noting sensations and thoughts without judgment. And you can cultivate mindfulness informally in daily activities, eating, walking, washing dishes, or typing an email, doing each thing with full presence. Instead of your body doing one thing while your mind is lost elsewhere, you gather yourself into the here and now. If you're drinking a cup of tea, just drink the tea. Feel the warmth, taste the flavor, be aware of the subtle sensations and the gratitude for this simple pleasure. When emotions arise, mindfulness notices them. Anger is present, or sadness is here. Rather than immediately acting on them or repressing them, you observe them like a passing cloud. This simple, not easy, but simple practice of observing without immediate reaction gives you insight and choice. Mindfulness is the opposite of operating on autopilot. For instance, with mindfulness, you might catch yourself about to snap at your child out of habit and pause, breathing, recognizing frustration in me. That moment of mindful pause can save you from saying something hurtful and allow a more considered response. In a very real sense, right mindfulness is one of the most transformative tools on the path. It allows you to see the processes of your mind and life clearly. As the Buddha said, mindfulness is the one way to overcome sorrow and realize nibbana. Cultivating it leads to profound insights. You start to see impermanence in action. Your thoughts and feelings constantly change. You see suffering tension arise when you cling, and you glimpse that there is no fixed self in those changing processes, just an ever-evolving stream. These insights pave the way to liberation. But even on a mundane level, mindfulness makes life rich and vivid because you're actually here for it, not lost in the past or future. Right concentration, samma samadhi. This final factor refers to developing deep mental focus and unification, often through meditation. In the Buddhist context, it specifically points to the jhana states of profound meditative absorption and stillness. Right concentration means the mind can remain steady and undistracted, peacefully focused on a wholesome object. Now, not everyone will attain jhana or even knows what that is, but the spirit of right concentration in daily life is cultivating an ability to focus deeply and calmly. In everyday life, this might begin with a daily meditation practice, even just 5-10 minutes where you focus on the breath or a phrase or a visualization, training the mind to come back when it wanders. Over weeks and months, this practice strengthens your mental muscles of attention. You'll notice the difference when doing tasks you can read or work with less mind wandering. You can listen to someone without your mind drifting off. You might even experience moments of flow, a concentrated state where time flies and you're fully immersed. Right concentration is also about calm. In our overstimulated era, training in concentration is an antidote to the fragmented, anxious mind. For example, if you find your mind racing at night, practices of concentration like focusing on your breath or systematically relaxing each part of your body can collect those scattered thoughts and induce tranquility. Some people use prayers or mantras, repeated phrases to similar effect. That single-pointed focus crowds out ruminative thinking and brings peace. Eventually, a well-concentrated mind can enter blissful stillness in meditation, the jhana states which deeply refresh the mind and provide a taste of liberation. But even without chasing special states, any step toward greater concentration and calm will support the other path factors tremendously. It becomes easier to be mindful, to apply effort, to stick to ethics when your mind isn't a wild monkey. Concentration tames the monkey mind into a steady elephant capable of great power and gentleness. These 8 factors are not to be worked on one after the other in a sequence. They support each other simultaneously. It's often depicted as an 8-spoked wheel precisely because all spokes must be strong for the wheel to turn smoothly. If one area is weak, say one tries to meditate, right mindfulness and concentration but lives unethically, wrong livelihood or action, progress will falter. Conversely, improvement in one factor helps the others. For instance, practicing mindfulness factor 7 will naturally lead you to speak and act more carefully. Factors 3 and 4 because you're more aware of what you're doing. Living ethically gives you a clear conscience that enhances concentration in meditation. It's a holistic way of life, not a pick-and-choose list. Modern Buddhist teachers sometimes refer to practicing the Eightfold Path as cultivating a whole life path. This means we don't treat spirituality as something separate from our day-to-day. Our commute, our cooking, our conversations, our entertainment choices all become part of the training. Every moment is an opportunity to practice one or several of the path factors. Stuck in traffic, perhaps practice patience and mindful breathing, right effort mindfulness. Faced with a moral decision at work, reflect on right view and intention to guide you. Feeling down and purposeless, recall right view that all things change and maybe do an act of generosity to uplift the mind, which also kicks in right effort to cultivate a wholesome state. What's beautiful is that as you walk this path, the quality of dukkha in your life begins to diminish. You may notice you don't get as angry as before, or if you do, it passes faster with mindful awareness. Your mind isn't constantly buzzing with wants and worries. There's more contentment in simple things. Relationships improve because you communicate more honestly and kindly. Even when external hardships come, and they will, the path doesn't magically prevent illness loss or economic troubles you find. You can face them with more equanimity and courage. You suffer less because you understand it better and don't amplify it with resistance or panic. As one insight meditation teacher put it, the Noble Eightfold Path offers us a way through life that is far more wise and intentional than the meandering path of ongoing suffering that our human conditioning naturally takes us on. By living intentionally according to these principles, you step off the meandering, looping path of least resistance, which was getting us nowhere but back to dissatisfaction and onto a path of purpose. Importantly, the Eightfold Path is not a rigid checklist of do's and don'ts. It's a flexible framework to be integrated creatively into your life. A layperson in the 21st century might not practice exactly like a monk in ancient India, but the essence is the same. Whether you are a teacher, engineer, artist, or parent at home, you can live by these factors. As an example, a school teacher friend of mine saw her classroom as her practice field. She maintained right intention each morning. May I help these children learn and be kind, practiced right speech. In how she talked to the kids, no harshness, lots of encouragement, right mindfulness in listening to them deeply, right effort in continually improving her teaching skills, and so on. It transformed not only her experience of teaching, it became a kind of joyful service rather than just a job, but also influenced the kids who felt her genuine care and presence. In Western countries today, many people are embracing mindfulness and ethical living, even if they don't label it Buddhist. The universality of the Eightfold Path is such that one could follow it entirely as a secular psychological lifestyle and still reap immense benefits. You don't have to believe in rebirth or any specific doctrine to see that lying less makes your life simpler, or mindfulness makes you less stressed, or generosity makes you happier than selfishness. The Buddha's insight can be verified in our own experience here and now. In fact, he encouraged people to come and see Ehipassiko, test it for themselves, not merely accept it on faith. By implementing the path, we start to fulfill what the Buddha identified as life's true purpose, not to achieve X, Y, Z, but to gradually free ourselves from the fetters of greed, hatred, and delusion, the root causes of suffering. Day by day, precept by precept, breath by breath, we peel back layers of our habitual discontent. And what emerges is something unexpected, a baseline of contentment and wisdom that isn't shaken so easily by the ups and downs of life. We become, in a sense, our own island of stability. As the Buddha advised, be an island unto yourselves, a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge, by taking the Dhamma, truth and path as your guide. Conclusion. At the outset, we asked, what is the real purpose of life? Modern society told us it was to be happy, to chase success, pleasure, and personal fulfillment. But that pursuit left us, and even the most successful among us, strangely unsatisfied. The Buddha's revolutionary insight was that the purpose of life is not to endlessly chase happiness, but to understand and overcome suffering. This is not what most people initially think, hence our title, Not What You Think. It turns out the key to true happiness was hiding in plain sight. Stop running after it, and instead address the root of why you feel unhappy to begin with. On the surface layer, we discovered a truth many come to realize in their own time: getting what you want, money, accolades, pleasures, never fully quenches the thirst. There's always another craving, another insecurity, another itch. The modern rat race is like climbing a ladder that never ends. Each rung achieved just reveals another rung above. This constant striving is exhausting. We may experience moments of joy, but they slip through our fingers and the baseline of discontent returns. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. No wonder, as we saw, celebrities and geniuses alike felt a void despite their worldly triumphs. The modern misunderstanding is that if you patch that bucket with enough success and fun, it will hold water happiness permanently. But the leak is on the inside. It's the very nature of craving that is the hole. That brings us to the deeper layer, the Buddha's Dhamma teaching, which tells us to fix the bucket itself, to heal the mind of the hole of craving and ignorance. When you do that, you don't have to frantically pour more and more water pleasures to feel content. A modest amount of joy and peace naturally stays with you. In fact, when the hole is truly sealed in nirvana, contentment is complete no matter what external circumstances are. The ultimate purpose then is freedom. Freedom from the compulsions and fears that keep us trapped. It's a freedom that manifests as understanding, love, and inner peace. Paradoxically, when you stop obsessing over, am I happy? How can I get happier? You free up energy to actually live, to pay attention, to help others, to appreciate each moment. And in doing so, a profound and stable happiness arises on its own. As the Buddha wisely taught, joy comes not from filling our lives with fleeting pleasures, but from removing the thorns that constantly prick us, our greed, anger, and delusion. Remove the thorns and natural joy can bloom. This journey is not necessarily easy or quick. It's called a path because it is walked step by step, moment by moment. There will be setbacks and challenges, but consider the alternative: staying on the default setting of endless craving and momentary satisfactions, which we already know leads to more of the same dissatisfactions. By choosing the path of wisdom, you are essentially choosing to wake up from a recurring bad dream. It's the dream that something out there will finally complete you. Waking up, you realize, as author Viktor Frankl did in The Hellish Confines of a Concentration Camp, that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And the Buddha's path greatly expands that freedom. It shows us how to change our attitudes, our habits, even the very texture of our consciousness, so that suffering diminishes and freedom grows. In practical terms, embracing life's true purpose means a shift in priorities. It means we start valuing wisdom over wealth, compassion over comfort, and liberation over likes. Not that we abandon our jobs or families, rather, we infuse our work and relationships with those higher values. Success is redefined. It's not about how much you own, but how much you've understood. Not how many experiences you've had, but how much peace you've found within. The Nobel laureate physicist Albert Einstein once remarked that a calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success, combined with constant restlessness. In a way, he was pointing to the middle way without maybe knowing it. A life of balance and insight yields contentment. As we conclude, it's worth noting that none of this implies a rejection of joy or beauty in life. On the contrary, when you stop clinging and start paying mindful attention, life can become more vivid and wondrous. A simple walk in nature, the smile of your child sharing a meal with friends. These may evoke a more heartfelt joy than any material trophy ever did. The difference is, you're not trying to possess those moments. You simply experience them fully and let them pass. You know that your well-being doesn't hinge on any particular condition. This gives a sense of fearlessness and ease. In Buddhist texts, an enlightened person is sometimes described as anandvagata, not dependent on anything. Imagine the relief of that. It's like finally setting down a heavy backpack you've carried all your life. To put it poetically, life's purpose is not to chase sunlight glinting on the wall, but to open the window and step out into the full light of day. Happiness was the glint, a reflection, a promise. Freedom is stepping into the light itself. And when you do, you find that light was within you all along. The Buddha merely helps us remove the blinds. In closing, the call to action is gentle yet clear. Shift your focus. Instead of asking, how can I get more happiness out of life, begin asking, what am I clinging to? How am I creating suffering, and how can I let go? Take even one principle from the Eightfold Path and practice it earnestly. You will see the difference. Maybe start with mindfulness in your daily routine, or practice more compassion in your relationships, or simplify an addictive habit. Let your own experience be the guide. As the Buddha advised his disciple, be a lamp unto yourself. The real purpose of life reveals itself not in a flash of external glory, but in the slow dawning of internal wisdom. It's a purpose you live and feel in the quiet of your heart and the kindness of your actions. It might not be what we think, it's far more profound. And as you walk this path, you join countless others across time and cultures who have turned suffering into grace and confusion into clarity. You begin to fulfill the potential of this precious human life. Happiness then is no longer the goal. It becomes the beautiful side effect of a life aimed at truth, love, and freedom from dukkha. Ultimately, the ending of craving, dispassion, cessation, and liberation, as the Buddha described the goal, might sound lofty, but it is reached one mindful breath, one kind act, one wise choice at a time. Each day we can ask, am I feeding the habit of dissatisfaction or the habit of freedom? In this very question, purpose awakens.